afternoon for those of you on the East Coast, and thank you for attending the first ever Equinix and nScaled webinar. Our panelists this morning are Ephraim Baron and Mario Olivarez. Ephraim is the Director of Enterprise Cloud Solutions at Equinix, and you may know him as a blogger from Interconnection, which is the official Equinix blog. Mario is the VP of Product Management here at nScaled. He's got 15 years of experience in the IT infrastructure and internet industry. So this morning, Ephraim is going to talk about why disaster recovery is so critical right now, and then he's going to give you an overview of the changing disaster recovery landscape. Mario will then tell you a little bit about recovery as a service and the current options that are available today. And he is also going to demonstrate nScaled's recovery console. I'll be recording today's webinar, and it will be available after the presentation on YouTube, nScale's YouTube account. And then I can also send you guys a link to the recording this afternoon. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions box at any time during the presentation, and then Ephraim and Mario will answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, please enjoy the presentation.
Great. So just want to make sure that the agenda slide is now visible. Is that correct?
Looks good to me.
Okay. So briefly, I want to give a background on Equinix for anyone who might not be familiar with us, which is not uncommon. We're the world's largest provider of carrier-neutral data center services. We have 104 data centers around the world in 38 metros, 4,000 customers, and the key to what we provide is both high-quality facilities and density of network carriers. We have over 700 network carriers who we host in our facilities. So rather than either having your own facility where you might have one or two network carriers or going with one of the telco facilities, we provide you very broad choice. And the combination of many locations and density of network providers means that you can deliver high-quality connections to users. And the key statistic here is sub-10 millisecond latency for 90% of the population of North America and Europe and a number of Asian metros. Again, 38 markets. We're a $1.6 billion business currently, and half of that immediately goes back into new facilities. We're constantly looking to grow and expand the business, and we have a never go dark philosophy, meaning in any metro, we never want to run out of capacity because if we have customers who are growing with us, they need to be able to depend on additional space being available as they grow. So we're always looking to grow and expand to make sure we can meet our customer needs. Here's a quick map that shows where we're located. The ones in red are where we are. The ones in blue are where we're looking. So as I say, we're constantly trying to make sure that we are keeping up with customer demand. So as we're looking at where to deploy the next site, we're doing that in collaboration with our customers. You know, it wouldn't be a whole lot of point in building a site and have nobody show up. And if a lot of people want a site, for instance, sites in India, sites in the Middle East, Moscow, those are ones that we prioritize. So some of the statistics, you know, 8 of the top 10 web properties, 9 of the top 10 content distribution networks, lots of cloud providers. There are lots of online businesses that build on top of Platform Equinix because it gives them the global reach. We have 3 connectivity options. So in addition to the normal Layer 3 connectivity that you can get through service providers, we have a couple of others. And even with the what we call optimized internet, there are some advantages. We have the broadest choice of carriers, and we're also on their backbone circuits because we serve as the major peering points for these telcos to be exchanging traffic. We also have a service called Equinix Direct that allows you to buy by the month. You would have a single port, and then you can select from basically a class of service that you're looking for, and that allows you to both rapidly provision and change carriers, which for those of you who've worked with telcos know that can often be a challenge. So, and you get very competitive pricing, consolidated billing, and centralized support as well. On the direct connect side, this is if you're in the same data center as somebody you want to connect to. So rather than going outside and paying transit to come back in, if they're in the same facility, you can run a cross-connect from your cage to theirs, 1 gig or 10 gig link, and it's very fast, secure, and very cost-effective. So, for example, if you wanted Amazon Web Services, you can get a direct connect to them in Ashburn and Silicon Valley, and then pay a much lower data transfer rate. And then the third option is carrier Ethernet, where the Ethernet exchange network was set up by carriers for them to exchange traffic, and now that's opened up to service providers, to cloud customers. So, for example, we have a beaconing. We have a circuit that I'm running a test on right now, running from the East Coast to the West Coast, and it's a giggy circuit, and it costs $5,000 a month, which is about anywhere from a fifth to a tenth the cost of a typical WAN circuit. So very high capacity, QoS-enabled circuit. So these three connectivity options give you a lot of choice in how you connect, and then we have 700 network providers that give you a lot of choice in who you connect to. And that's given rise to a number of ecosystems of the companies who see the value of both the global footprint and the density of networks. So financial services, big customer, cloud, absolutely, content, gaming, and then enterprise. And all of this is built around networks. So that's the quick overview of Equinix. And now let me turn it over to Mario.
Great. Thank you, Ephraim. For those of you who haven't heard of nScaled, nScaled is a leading recovery as a service provider, the acronym being RAS. And as you can see, our tagline is Disaster Recovery 2.0. And what we mean by that is, our goal is to change the way that businesses think about and protect their IT business systems. You can go to the next slide, Ephraim. And we do that by making disaster recovery easy and affordable for the mid-market and the enterprise. And we do that primarily by providing the best RPOs and RTOs in the industry, and really eliminating and abstracting the complexity of disaster recovery with a simple SaaS delivery model. And nScaled really is the platform for companies with highly confidential data. You can go to the next slide, Ephraim. And as you can see, our customers include some of the world's largest legal firms, financial institutions, regional banks, as well as pharmaceutical companies. And they're customers across all sections and from all industries. Next slide, please.
Okay. So I wanted to do a little bit of a overview and trip down memory lane, if you will. And so there's the obligatory fear, uncertainty, doubt slide that you have to have in any sort of disaster recovery presentation. I also went out looking for graphics that illustrated disasters and computer disasters, and for some reason they all involve fire. I'm not sure why. So there's the burning laptop, the burning hard drive. If your hard drive's already open and exposed, I think you're screwed already. But the statistic that I love to cite is of companies that experience disasters, most of them will go out of business if they aren't prepared with some sort of a DR plan. The 43% will never open, 51% will close within 2 years. And those are pretty sobering statistics that I think probably 10, 15 years ago it was a little harder, well, more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago it was a little harder to get people quite as concerned about DR. The realities of the world we live in have hit home with a number of folks, and they're starting to take it more seriously. But get into the complete discussion of disasters, you have to define what a disaster is. I worked at a company where we decided we were going to do disaster recovery, but we had a generic disaster. So the person who was doing interviews for our business impact analyses would come around to people and say, what's your response plan in case of a disaster? And I remember saying, well, what disaster are we talking about? She says, well, just a disaster. I said, well, disasters essentially have three dimensions. There's the scenario, the impact, and the likelihood. And a scenario might be, I lose my laptop. And, the impact is, hey, I don't have my data. And the likelihood, well, depends on how forgetful I am, but it's still, fair likelihood. So what do I do to mitigate that? I back up my data, or I, make sure that all my critical stuff is stored on a network drive or something like that. So certain things, accidental file deletion, yeah, that can certainly happen. Or let's say a disk drive dies. Likelihood very high. So what do I do to mitigate it? I use RAID. And then you get to the things that you really can't really mitigate against. So the one I always use, hey, if the sun goes nova, there will be data loss. All life on the planet will cease, and quite frankly, we have bigger problems. So within that continuum, you really want to make sure that you're focusing on things that are serious, a fairly high likelihood to happen, and a significant impact. And then you can usually justify the time and effort required to do DR planning, as opposed to the more AirSAT's approach to DR of, blame somebody else, update your resume, and go find another job. So I mentioned the first steps that a lot of companies take, where they say, well, we're going to do our business impact analyses, document which applications are critical, have our whole hierarchy of applications, and then focus on the ones that are truly mission critical, and then have run books and documented DR plans. And what you end up with is what we used to call the big honkin' DR binder, this loose leaf binder that had all of the procedures. And I was told when I was responsible for data center operations at one company, if the building starts shaking, go to your office and grab the binder before you leave the building, because that is the secret to the company reconstituting itself at some later date and remaining in business. It's somewhat of a placebo, but at least you have documented all of the things that will go away when the big one hits. And again, another cartoon that says essentially the same thing. If you don't have anything more detailed than these are our critical systems, and if there's a disaster, they go away, the company ceases to function, you've just predicted a fairly obvious future. So what do? Well, a lot of companies rely on backups, and they put all of these tapes, send them off to Iron Mountain or Recall or wherever. And the challenges there, and there's numerous challenges, is, amongst others, changing tape formats. I mean, you think back, for those of us who've been in IT a long time, what was the tape format 20 years ago? Maybe that was 4mm DAT. If you went prior to that, you might have even had the half-inch magnetic tape reels that you feed onto these big tape readers. And then gets into different cartridge formats and LTO and Ultrium and whatever. And so let's say you get all your tapes. And again, the disaster recovery scenario for the company I was working for was, I'm in on the peninsula in the Bay Area. Our DR or our data retention site was in the East Bay. So assuming the bridges weren't out, I'd go across the bridges. If otherwise, I'd have to go around the bay and show up at the Iron Mountain facility and say, there's been a disaster, I need all my tapes. Please give me all my tapes. And assuming I could talk somebody into doing that, then I would load all of these tapes into my vehicle, and that's as far as the plan went. We had no place to restore the tapes. We had no equipment to restore the tapes onto, but you get the idea that the idea that, well, I have backups, therefore I'm protected. What's the scenario? You're protected against file deletion or something where you can recover those tapes in a facility, but you need to take it a step further and say, do I have the equipment? Do I have the means to bring this data back to life?
Ephraim, as a side note here, when I look at, you can go back to that tape slide. When
Absolutely.
You look at the customers that we bring on board every day, you would be surprised, even though of how many customers are still doing this. And I would say, about 50% of our clients who switch to recovery as a service, a lot of them are basically retiring tape backups. So even though you kind of position this as a thing of the past, it's still very present, and there's still a lot of businesses, believe it or not, who are using tape to do their offsite backup.
Yeah, and well, I included an old quote from, it's basically a Unix geek quote, the never underestimate the bandwidth of a station wagon full of tapes hurtling down the highway. That, in terms of transferring, even if you do a online backup, if it's over a very slow link, you don't have a lot of bandwidth to restore. So it's often quicker if your only means of retaining data is tapes, of driving the tapes around. So yeah, there's a number of problems, and I forget the statistics on the rate of successful restores from tapes, but I'm sure people don't always retension their tapes once a year and follow all the maintenance processes recommended by the tape manufacturers either.
Right, exactly.
So then for the folks who get a bit more serious about DR, they say, well, let's build out a DR environment. We need a location for recovering the operations. So then you have a couple of options. You can either, if you're going to do it yourself, build out a exact duplicate of your production environment, which has its challenges because keeping everything in sync, whether it's patches, firmware levels, and everything else, is double the challenge. Or you do what I always used to do, what was told to do, which is, okay, we're doing a technology refresh. Take the old gear and put it in our DR site. And, oh, and by the way, we're not going to renew maintenance on it, so hope it doesn't break. And so what you have, the lower picture, I think, might be an ENIAC. I don't know. But you end up with stuff that is old, problematic, and typically far lower performance, given the rate of growth of computer performance. Something that's 3 years newer than your DR environment is probably at least 2 to 3 times faster as well. So, the adage, you want it real bad, you get it real bad, sometimes plays out in these kinds of scenarios. And then the other thing that I always found a little bit amusing, I guess you'd say, is when the big one hits, they said, you need to not only grab the big honkin' DR binder, but you then need to go to the bunker we've designated where everyone is going to huddle and plan out how we're going to recover from this disaster. Realistically, that isn't likely to happen. What you're going to do is you're going to go check on health and welfare of people you care about, and then if you can get connected from the remote site, from wherever you are, you'll participate in disaster recovery discussions. But the idea that everyone is going to huddle in the war room, and this is a picture from my favorite movie, Dr. Strangelove, and all sit around and plan out the future of at least your company, if not the human race, just is not all that likely. So
Yeah,
having Go ahead.
Ephraim, I was going to say that, the slide you talk about sort of these real disasters that happen, whether it's a tornado, which you have on that lower left-hand photo, or whether it's some other natural disaster. But, what about the reality of just systems, maybe something not so extreme, just everyday systems failing within a data center or even within an office, and sort of how do you just quickly recover from that as well as kind of another way to think about it, with disaster recovery and with just recovery as a service, kind of, that next evolution of that. Sure, there's these very extreme, real situations that can take out, your data center or your critical IT systems, but, more practically speaking, and this is what we see sort of with our customers as well, is we definitely have dealt with clients on the, in certain disaster recovery zones is what we call it, where there's a natural catastrophe and offices are evacuated, critical IT business systems are impacted, and they engage with us to fail over those systems to continue the business. But what we see even is a lot of times it's not to that extreme. I mean, it's every day a drive fails, a system fails. How could I just quickly recover from that without impacting the business? And so that's another angle to think about as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because the big disasters are more visible, but there's things that happen every day, and systems fail, servers fail, the storage processor on your primary array fails, and you need to be, and again, in the whole dimensions of scenario, likelihood, and impact, make sure those things that are medium impact but high probability that you have a plan for that. So then some folks say, well, this is too complex for me. I'm going to throw money at the problem and it's all going to go away. And they maybe look at a hosted solution. And there's some companies that have done quite well over the years in hosting DR hot sites. And they generally offer two models, either shared or dedicated. If it's shared, the idea is we will replicate the data and have equipment available that matches your needs, and in the event of a disaster at your site, you can then use this equipment. The challenge there is if the big one does hit, there's a whole lot of people and not enough equipment to go around. It's an oversubscribed resource. So it's lower cost, but it's higher risk. So folks who are really concerned say, well, I want the hot site with dedicated equipment. And it's essentially set up as an active-passive kind of arrangement where, and it would be roughly equivalent to you doing the DR site yourself with duplicated equipment of the same quality as what you're running in production. So again, a viable option, although pretty darn expensive.
Yeah, just one comment on that last slide, Ephraim. These are all very true, what you said about duplicating hardware, managing that hardware, and having to incur those costs to implement DR. But the other thing here, too, is that you sort of, with these two models that you pointed out, these more traditional models where, let's say you're not doing it yourself and buying the infrastructure, but you're leasing the infrastructure from a service provider, you're still having to, lease that. You're still having to consume those services for a worst-case scenario and pay for them. You're not really getting the benefits of multi-tenancy per se, where you just sort of pay for what you use, and then once you actually fail over, then you're consuming those services. So that's another important point with kind of these more traditional type hosted DR services.
Yeah, absolutely. And unlike if you replicated the equipment yourself and had it in your own facility, typically with these hosted DR solutions, you're not allowed to use it for other things for test dev. So it's dedicated, but it's still unavailable other than in event of a disaster.
Exactly.
So then you start to look at DR in the cloud, and there's a number of different levels there that you can do. First just backup and recovery to the cloud of data. So get rid of your tapes, back it up to the cloud, get some high bandwidth connections, and protecting the data. You can also then pre-configure some virtual machine instances so that you can attach them to your data relatively quickly and turn up capacity. You can have it set up as an active-passive with all of the systems pre-configured and just waiting to be fully scaled up. Or you can do a distributed, multi-site, load-balanced in the cloud application that exists and is processing in both locations, which sort of gets to the last way that you might approach DR. I'll come back to that one, which is a multi-site where you don't have DR per se. What you have is distributed applications. And if you have multiple sites that all use a set of applications, you can distribute those applications across the site so any one site can go down and the load just switches to the other sites. It's elegant. It's a lot harder to do in reality than it is on paper, but that's one possible option. And the last thing, if you're going with hosted DR, there's a number of questions you should ask them, such as where are they located, because that is going to affect latency. It's going to affect your RTO, RPO. What connectivity options they offer, SLAs. Key one is capacity. Again, we get back to that multi-tenant environment, and if the big one hits and lots of people are standing in line, do they have the capacity to meet that demand? Physical and remote access, both from an audit standpoint and just if I need to get into the facility, can I do that? What's the process for declaring disaster? You may have all of these things in place, but there has to be the handshake protocol that says, okay, it is a disaster, switch over, and how do you escalate when you need help? So, anything to add to that one, Mario?
No, I think those are definitely the questions to ask in terms of looking at a more traditional DR type vendor. I think when you look at recovery as a service, that list of questions gets a little bit longer. But I believe the next section is mine, and I can get into that a little bit more.
Indeed it is. Take it away.
So the way that we recovery as a service is an emerging market. It's definitely, the next evolution of not only disaster recovery, but just sort of a broader topic of if you're in charge of running IT systems for business, how do you recover in general, whether that's local, whether that's remote, or whether you're having to deal with long-term retention. And so the way that we sort of like to talk about the evolution of DR is with this slide here. And believe it or not, you still have companies today who still just only do backup, local backup. And obviously that's a problem because first off, you're only dealing with data recovery. There's poor recovery times at that, and I mean there's really no way to test your recovery. And as you were pointing out in terms of the whole evolution of this, then you get into this whole scenario of duplicating your infrastructure. So let's say that you have IT systems that are critical to the business, and the business is willing to invest in making sure that there is some disaster recovery plan in place. So we're sort of dealing with, okay, so let me go and buy the duplicate equipment, let me get the resources, let me buy the software. And the problem with this is that it's complicated and it's expensive. It's not trivial to do, as you pointed out, Ephraim. And and then if you kind of move to 2006 and with the whole public cloud infrastructure as a service, you're not dealing with, say, the capital expenditure of having to buy that duplicate equipment, but you're still, that's become an operational expense, but it's just as complicated. And what about confidential data? I mean, I think there's still a lot of questions in people's mind about what type of data you put in or you don't put into the public cloud. I mean, if you look at sort of the last 4 years, there's no question that the public cloud is a great place to run web applications, but I don't think you've necessarily seen the transition of companies running their critical business systems or even failing over those critical business systems in the cloud. And again, the public cloud, it's a toolbox. It gives you servers, it gives you the compute, the storage, the networking, but it's not a highly refined system for recovery. And that's where recovery as a service comes in. And you can think of recovery as a service as all of the attributes of infrastructure as a service, except more suited for recovery. And I'll go into the details of that. And I have a quote here by Gartner, and Gartner is predicting that by 2015, 30% of all mid-sized businesses will adopt recovery in the cloud to support their IT operations. It's a huge market, and it's growing by 28% year over year. So when you talk about recovery as service, knowing that this is an emerging market, what do we mean exactly? And this is how we like to think about it. So we have what we call the three-phase recovery platform. And so we provide local recovery. This is immediate recovery of servers that can be recovered in 15 minutes, or the recovery of data, which can be done in less than 2 minutes. We also, in the service, include what we call remote recovery. So this is not just recovering a server on-premise, but it's actually failover into the cloud. This is data that's generally anywhere from 30 minutes to 30 days old, because generally when a business fails over their systems because of a disaster, they generally want more recent data. And in terms of times, we can fail over a server into the cloud to continue business operations in 15 minutes. And then this is what really separates nScaled from sort of all of the other providers, and this is really our secret sauce is we not only fail over a server, but we also can fail over the entire data center, including the network and the permissions, and we do Active Directory integration and all of those things. And then lastly here, for companies that have compliance requirements around long-term data retention or internal business policies, we offer clients obviously to store data for a long period of time, anywhere from a week to many, many years. And this is deduplicated storage, which is very cost-effective. And we have clients who store data for anywhere from 1 to 5 years. And so in terms of where data is located, with at least our implementation of recovery as a service, there's really 4 copies of data at any given time. It's residing on the primary production systems. It's residing locally on what we call a local cloud appliance. And I'll go into that in the next slide. It's also remotely in the nScaled data center, and then even on a 4th copies on a 4th set of infrastructure for long-term data retention. So at every point, we're storing data for recovery. And so in terms of the actual recovery service levels, the way that we like to think about this is if I'm an IT administrator or director of IT responsible for running those systems, I can recover locally in the event that there's lost data, a corrupted file, a deleted file, or even a virus attack within minutes. That's the type of flexibility that is provided with recovery as a service. And then you could, if there's a natural disaster, you can fail over an entire data center within 2 hours or even less if it's just a single server, or if you're just failing over an in-tiered application like an Exchange server or what have you. And then lastly, and this is a key attribute to recovery as a service, is that, and this kind of goes back to your list, your laundry list, Ephraim, of questions to ask. You can test all of this. You can test the failover in an environment that's not going to interrupt your primary systems. They're not going to interrupt your production systems. And this is really the power of recovery as a service. And so when I talked about the public cloud and Amazon, services like Amazon or Rackspace or GoGrid, what have you, those are all great services for for provisioning infrastructure for hosting applications, but they're not really geared towards recovery, and they don't provide, for example, the automated testing, automated failover testing for systems. And so this is part of the recovery as a service value proposition.
Yeah, and that's huge, because I know one of the things that would make my sysadmins the most nervous was if we ever were going to test our DR because they had no confidence it worked, and they knew that they would spend hours and hours cleaning up the mess that the test was going to cause, because there's just so many things that were done in a semi-haphazard way, like, well, how's DNS going to be handled? How's, when we were doing it to our own site, just do we have big enough data pipes and all of those things. So that automated test is huge.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And this is a bit of a cliche, but I think it's very true. If you look at sort of IT departments today, especially with sort of the state of the economy and where we're at, obviously IT departments are being asked to do more with less. And when you think about sort of how do you implement recovery, and more importantly, how do you implement disaster recovery or failover? And the reality is, what ends up happening is that those people are already so busy that even if you end up spending the money to duplicate infrastructure, the reality is if you're not testing it, then it's not really a benefit, because in the event that something does happen and you can't fail over, then it's sort of wasted money, right? It doesn't work. And where I'm getting at is most businesses, when they do it yourself, aren't really testing the failover, just because those resources that they would need are too busy. They're understaffed already, and they're too busy doing other critical tasks within the business. And so this is a real value when it comes to recovery as a service. It's not only, the idea is not only looking at disaster recovery or how could we make that more effective, but how do you deal with just recovery across the organization, whether that's local, across multiple offices, across multiple data centers, but also remotely, and how could I easily manage that and really reduce the burden on my IT staff?
Absolutely.
So kind of getting into this just a step further, here's kind of our workflow, and this is how, when we do a typical implementation, this is sort of at a high level, and I'm going to get in a little bit deeper in the next slide of how we like to look at the workflow. So starting on the left there where it says existing infrastructure. So this could be an on-premise office, or it could be a data center. It could be virtual machines, physical machines, various operating systems. Most of our clients are mid-size and have diverse infrastructures. And so what we will do is we install what we call a local cloud appliance, and we basically mirror the primary layout of all of those systems to these local cloud appliances. And that local cloud appliance does two things. One is it replicates or it mirrors those systems, and those mirrors are quiescent snapshots that reside on the system. And it allows you to do one of two things. In the event that you need to restore a file, you can go in there and grab the file from the system and restore it, or download it to your desktop, or restore it back to the original system. Or if you actually need to just restore the system, you can do that back onto the primary system, the source system, or you can actually use the local cloud appliance as a sort of a private cloud. It has a compute component to it. So if you had an Exchange server, for example, that failed and you needed to spend 12 hours rebuilding the system, you could actually, while you're doing that, you could actually run that system on the local cloud appliance. So it really serves those two purposes in terms of recovery. It also acts as a storage gateway, and it interfaces with any one of our remote cloud data centers, and it does that through a secure IPsec VPN or any type of private circuit as well. And those snapshots are essentially replicated to an nScaled data center, and that's what really facilitates the failover into the cloud for disaster recovery purposes. And then again, this is part of our value proposition here. All of that is managed. We abstract the complexities of having to set that up and manage that through what we call a recovery console. This is a SaaS interface that manages infrastructure across multiple locations on the customer side. It manages multiple local cloud appliances that reside on within those facilities, manages the replication, not only obviously from the primary systems to the local cloud appliance, but also from the local cloud appliance into the cloud. And it really, you don't have to be a highly trained, experienced system administrator to do this. I mean, we really have made it accessible for your average IT person. And this is really what recovery as a service is about. It's about abstracting that complexity and making it more easy to manage recovery across the entire enterprise. So, kind of going, so this is our secure multi-tenant architecture, and I kind of want to sort of, before I get into the details of this, I'd like to talk about sort of one of your slides about, having to duplicate infrastructure to do DR. Does that, another value proposition of recovery as a service is the fact that we've built out this very sophisticated, environment, and we deliver it as a service, and the reality is that most enterprises or mid-market companies cannot, not because necessarily they don't have the talent, but don't have the time and the resources to invest to build out the type of remote facility that they need in order to do recovery or to do disaster recovery. And so this is our architecture here, and this is what we call an nScaled pod, which is a multi-tenant highly capable data center. It's we provide a shared compute cloud that distributes our recovery costs across clients, making it cost effective. We provide 10 gigabit networking for high performance in terms of not only failing over a single server, but when you fail over your entire data centers and those systems need to communicate, it's just like probably better performance that you have within your own data center. And then finally here we offer different tiers of storage for maximizing cost for our clients. And the one thing I kind of want to spend a couple minutes talking about is how we do VLAN segmentation. And this is very, very important and kind of really plays into this whole automated testing. And so not only is this multi-tenant architecture, this is very, very similar to how Amazon would how they've architected their system, or any infrastructure provider. Ours just happens to be very geared towards a specific use case, which is recovery. But when you look at how we do VLAN segmentation, so obviously every client gets their own VLANs, but we go beyond just giving one VLAN per client. We actually, every client gets 3 VLANs or more if they require it, and each VLAN actually serves a very specific purpose. So first and foremost, every client gets a test VLAN, and this is when clients use the test VLAN to test the failover of production systems, or test snapshots that are residing within the nScaled cloud. It does so in an isolated VLAN that doesn't impact production systems, other production systems that reside within nScaled, or production systems that are back in the data center, because we do Active Directory integration, and we do integrate to the on-premise network, so we're a secure extension of that network. So very important point. We also provide clients with a production VLAN, so if they actually need to test failover, or if they just want to run virtual machines in the cloud for test dev purposes, as you pointed out, Ephraim, they can certainly do that. And then lastly here we have a DMZ a VLAN, and these are for clients that require an internet connection. So let's go ahead and let me go into a demo of the recovery console, the nScaled recovery console. So I'm going to go ahead and, because we're running out of time here, and we do have a lot of questions, and we have 15 minutes left, I'm going to keep this down to about 5 minutes, and then we're going to spend the last 10 minutes answering these questions. And I'm going to really focus on the 2 sections of the recovery console that are most used by our users, and go through the details. So, as you log into the nScaled recovery console, you land on this page. And this is what we call our dashboard. The dashboard is used by clients to monitor the health of their recovery services and all aspects of it across all locations. So if they have multiple offices or even multiple nScaled data centers, it's all done through this single pane of glass. In terms of the dashboard itself, we have these, we call them widgets, and essentially these are monitoring widgets. And the purpose of these is to give an end user instant visibility into the health of that service. So obviously here we have what we call our remote cloud connectivity. It has filters, so you can filter, by day, by month, by week. And the remote cloud connectivity widget monitors bandwidth, data transfer from customer offices around the world to nScaled data centers around the world. And nScaled does have data centers in Europe as well as the United States. So you can filter by time, and then you can filter by location. The second widget here is what we call a recovery point objective. So, as I was explaining how the system works in terms of, on-premise, there's important IT systems that are, running important business applications. We install a local cloud appliance, and then we mirror those for local recovery. And then what we do then is that local cloud appliance then replicates to the cloud. Well, there's a lot of replication and mirroring going on, and it's important that that replication and mirroring is always working 100% of the time. And so this widget here monitors all of that. And so anytime the mirroring or the replication, it's not meeting compliance, and compliance is set by customers, it appears on this list. And this list here is really used by two parties. One obviously is the administrator of the on the customer side, but also our IT staff here is also alerted and proactively alerted, and then we take action, and that's part of the service. We have on the left here what we call the latest alerts widget, and this shows you communications that are either coming from nScaled IT support, or even within the customer sending an alert. And then to the right of it, we have data growth. So obviously, part of the recovery as a service is dealing with data and moving large sets of data. And so as a customer, you want to understand how those things are trending. So this is a widget that allows you to see over time and by location, how much storage are you dealing with, and also how is that trending over time in terms of growth. And so you can see with this widget here, we have this reserved capacity. So this is generally a representation of how much total storage has been purchased. And then down here, what the actual growth has been by location. So if you just want to see growth within a particular facility, out of a particular facility, you can see that, or you can see it for all locations, obviously. Down here, generally we're dealing with clients who want to be able to monitor and report on who's doing what within the nScaled system. So this latest event is, a role-based access control widget that allows an end user to see who's doing what within the system, which is very important when you're dealing with companies that have very large IT staff. It's an audit record. So if someone recovered a system on this date or this time, you can go in and actually identify who that person was. And then lastly here, this is what we call the entitlement section. If you just want to get a quick inventory of what you purchased with nScaled, it's all listed there, and obviously this is our demo account. So again, dashboard page. This is a way for our support staff as well as the IT staff of customers to just monitor the health of the system in a proactive way. So let me go over to what we call the server section. And at the end of the day, all we're really dealing with is servers for the most part, or storage platforms. And it's very important for customers to be able to see what is going on with a particular server. And so as I had explained earlier, we really, in terms of recovery as a service, we're doing recovery for locally, to replace systems or files. We're also, replicating out to the cloud, and then we have our long-term storage for, long-term data retention. And so clients, if you look on the side navigation here, you see primary, local recovery, and then remote recovery, and then archived. And this is all about visibility into your infrastructure across multiple locations. And so our clients, once the system has been set up and everything is replicating, can easily click on primary and see their systems across all locations in a nice list here. And it just helps manage manage not only infrastructure but manage replication as well as backup. If a customer has lots of systems and they want to be able to tell very quickly, they want to be able to label what that system is, we have a tagging system here. So let's say that I have an Exchange server, and I want to be able to easily group Exchange servers across locations. I can give it a tag, and I just create an Exchange test tag, and I can easily take that and I can drag it over here, and there you go. I've tagged the server. Very useful functionality for managing large groups of servers. Going back to the infrastructure, so not only do we provide clients with visibility into their primary infrastructure, but we also give them visibility into the local recovery, the local cloud appliance. So those primary systems are being replicated, and their snapshots are residing on that LCA show up here. And if you needed to spin up a machine on the local cloud appliance, you just drill down into the machine. You would select a snapshot, and you can see down here that this machine here is being backed up, and here are all the snapshots. All you simply do is you select it, you hit configure and power on, and the system starts up within about 15 minutes. We also give visibility into the remote recovery. So if you want to see that primary system, you can see the snapshots on the locally. You could also see the same snapshots are being replicated up to the cloud in a list as well, and you can see that here are all of the servers that have replication out to the cloud. You can see basic information such as disk size, RAM, whether it's been certified to actually boot within the cloud. You simply click on this, click on the server name. We give you basic information, and we even actually have other capabilities in terms of changing if it's a VMware environment or a virtual environment, of adding RAM or changing disk size on the machine itself. So we do a little bit more than just recovery, but we do have those capabilities. But it's the same concept. You see these snapshots here that appear on this list. As an end user, if you need to fail over a system that has been replicated into the cloud, you simply select the snapshot. You click Activate Server. You test whether you want it on you determine whether it's a test or whether it's production, and you just hit OK. And it's literally that simple to recover. And then lastly here, just because we only have a few minutes and I want to get the questions, obviously we provide 24/7 support, and like any cloud infrastructure provider, we provide, if the customer has questions, they need help with anything, they come in here and they create a case, and we take care of them, we help them technically. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to our Q&A session.
Okay, thanks everybody. If you have any questions, please, you have a few more minutes to type them in and we will get to them. We've got a few questions. Let's see, it looks like the first one is for Ephraim. Okay, and John wants to know, what are the relative costs of the different connectivity options mentioned by Equinix?
Sure. So using optimized internet as a baseline, call that 1x. If you go with carrier Ethernet, you're going directly from our facility to a building, so you're eliminating local loop costs. So right away you're dropping anywhere from 15 to 35% of the cost. And they're also very cost-effective circuits, so depending on your bandwidth requirements, a minimum of, say, 15 to 30%. And then with Direct Connect, you're not paying transit at all, so you're just paying circuit costs. If you were to take, say, Amazon as an example of one of our customers you can Direct Connect to, your data transfer costs, because with Amazon it's free to go in and you pay to take it out, you'll save from, your costs will be from half to a fifth of what you would pay if you were going in over the internet. So substantial savings there with Direct Connect.
Great, thanks. And I've got another question. This is from Dan. Does nScaled support layer 2 Ethernet connectivity? Mario?
Yeah, so as I said, this is a question around how do customers connect data centers to the nScaled infrastructure, which obviously resides in Equinix facilities. And there's really multiple options. So we offer clients the ability to do an IPsec VPN over the internet. This is an encrypted, secured connection. And we help clients set that up, and obviously we manage and monitor that. For clients with existing private circuits, for example, MPLS, we can definitely integrate right into that, and client can terminate one of those circuits through Equinix and right into our cage or our infrastructure. And then we also provide layer 2 connection as well.
Great. And it looks like we're about out of time, so I want to thank you all for joining us. If you have any more questions, please email me at sarah.grants@nscaled.com, and I will send your questions to the appropriate person. And I really wanted to thank Ephraim Baron for speaking, and also Mario Olivarez for speaking. Great job. Okay, goodbye, everybody.